An international humanitarian organization reports citizens in Gaza are facing an extreme struggle to survive. Hamas says Gaza ceasefire deal with Israel is closer than ever. Syrian transitional authorities appoint Asad Hassan al-Shibani as foreign minister in the interim government. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time, and you're now watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. ActionAid, an international humanitarian organization, has reported that citizens in Gaza are facing an extreme struggle to survive, with many now surviving on less than a single loaf of bread per day. In a statement released, the organization said many families rely on community kitchens as their last hope for a single meal each day. However, several of these kitchens have been forced to shut down, leaving people without any source of food. According to ActionAid, only 4 bakeries are currently operational in Gaza, managed by the World Food Programme. Yet the demand for bread has grown so high that people are forced to begin queuing outside bakeries and flour trucks as early as 3 a.m. to secure their share. The municipality of Bethlehem has announced that Christmas this year would be limited to prayer and religious ceremonies as a rejection to the injustices against the Palestinian people. Speaking at a press conference, the local governor also expressed frustration at the international community's silence and called for a halt to the Israeli violations against the Palestinians. Pilgrims from around the world used to fill the square outside the 4th century church of the Nativity during the Christmas season. However, the October 7 attack and the war in Gaza have driven tourists away from this UNESCO World Heritage endangered site. Hamas and 2 other Palestinian groups have said that a Gaza ceasefire deal with Israel is closer than ever, provided Israel does not impose new conditions. The groups have stated that the closeness in a joint statement issued after talks in Cairo. Last week, indirect negotiations between Israel and Hamas, mediated by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States, were held in Doha, rekindling hope of an agreement. UNRWA has condemned the forced entry and presence of Palestinian armed actors in its health center in Jenin camp in the occupied West Bank. The organization said this happened on December 17th, adding it has been unable to access the center and does not presently have control over the facility and its use. Gaza's civil defense has urged the international community to put pressure on Israel to implement standard procedures for dealing with corpses in times of war. The civil defense also called for Israel to allow civil defense crews to retrieve dead bodies for a dignified burial. It also added that Israel has destroyed all heavy digging equipment and devices for the civil defense teams to reach those killed. The Israeli army has said it's investigating why its air defense interceptors have failed intercepting a ballistic missile from Yemen. More than a dozen people were injured from the failed interception of a ballistic missile launched from Yemen. This was the 3rd incident of its kind just this week. The ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to escalate with severe shortages of food, medicine, and basic necessities. International calls for aid and the protection of civilians grow louder amid the conflict.
Intensive efforts by the U.S. administration alongside mediators from Egypt and Qatar have been underway in recent days to push forward ceasefire talks before President Joe Biden leaves office next month. U.S. officials report that both Hamas and Israel are making concessions, though key differences persist. Repeated rounds of talks over the past year have failed, with Israel insisting on maintaining a military presence in Gaza, while Hamas demands the release of detainees before agreeing to troop withdrawals. So far, no significant progress was reported. U.S. official William Burns, after a brief visit to Doha, has left the region, though a U.S. delegation remains. The change of administration in Washington now, just weeks away, is driving urgency in the discussions. Both Israel and Hamas, along with mediators in Doha, are seeking to lay the groundwork for the next phase of negotiations. Key issues still divide the parties, particularly regarding the return of nearly 2 million Palestinians displaced by Israeli military operations and who will manage Gaza's borders and oversee the distribution of humanitarian aid. Another unresolved question is the future role of a Palestinian government in post-war Gaza, as both sides weigh the possibilities for authority and governance in the region.
For more analysis, we now move to Mark in our newsroom.
Thank you, Selma. So for more on the situation, we are joined from Occupied Jerusalem by the political science professor, Abdul Nasser Maki. Welcome to Q News. Thanks for being here with us. So what are the latest developments in Gaza?
You know, the latest development in Gaza is that now bombing, genocide, killing the people, destroying the hospitals, and even that the Israeli is still, that's attacking Gaza, all Gaza, not just in the north part of Gaza, but also the south, the Al-Mawasi, Rafah, all Gaza. So that means the Israelis continue to attacking Gaza, and also in the same time we are hearing and listening to some news that coming from Doha that there is progressing and developing in that the hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, and that means there are something will come maybe in the future, like maybe next week or maybe before the Trump is coming to the administration in America. But there are some new good news that, as you know, when they're meeting in Doha, the William Burns and also the Israeli and also some from the Egyptian and the Qatar, they are meeting there. And there are some good news from the Hamas that there are some flexibility even in their demand from like before. So that means we are waiting just maybe what will happening for the political things, but for the and the ground, that the thing is terrible there. The people is suffering. The people is starvation. The people is. There are many videos coming from Gaza. The children. That's died from the food, lack of food, and also from the cold. And you know about the cold, the raining, what happening before 2 days and yesterday in Gaza. So that's mean the situation is disaster in Gaza.
Yes, you mentioned the situation that's affecting civilians. So how is this continuing offensive by Israel affecting the people on the ground? Is there any sign of any hope, any support, any help?
No, I don't think so. We hear that there are some international community and also Israeli want to send, that some assistance to Gaza, but on the ground, the people is dying from the starvation. Before 2 days, two young, child had been killed by the lack of the food and also by the cold. Until now, the Israeli didn't do anything in order to support the people and provide assistance. This is something is not, it's correct. The people is, that is facing many problems in all aspects, from the a lack of the food, water, medicine, even the hospital. The hospital is, that's exposed to attacking from the Israeli, like Kamal Adwan hospital, by the airstrike and also by the soldiers there. I don't see that there is any hope that or any things that could help the people there. The people is continue saying that we need to overcome this problem. We need to reach to ceasefire.
Uh, so what can be done then? You say there's little hope. What can be done to prevent children like the ones that you mentioned from dying from starvation?
I think the only things or the most things that we could do with that is to reach to ceasefire. The
Okay.
ceasefire is the ceasefire is the Palestinian there for their children, for the women. Nothing, just the ceasefire. Otherwise, the Israeli is there. They are killing. They still continue. They continue killing, and we didn't see any, that's even intervention from any international community that help the people. So that's mean we need to reach to ceasefire, which is the hope of the Gazanian people.
So are there any signs of a ceasefire? You mentioned before that Hamas was showing some kind of flexibility.
Yes, I think that today or maybe yesterday or for tomorrow, I think the hope is now increasing. I think that Hamas is now more pragmatic for responding to the demands, and they know what they facing in Gaza, the people there, and also the demands like before what they are demanding. They are not more anymore there, like withdraw from all Gaza, all the end of the war. Just they are demanding for stopping and to reach to ceasefire, and also for the withdraw from Netzarim or Philadelphia, that border. So I think now the ball is in the Israeli corner, and Netanyahu especially. So Netanyahu should respond to all these demands from the all international community, from Trump, from the Arab, from Qatar, from Egypt, and until now, and also for the Israeli demonstrators. Today, as you know, there are thousands of demonstrators now in Tel Aviv and also many of the Israeli cities. They are demanding Netanyahu to stop the ceasefire and to release in order to reach to the deal of the hostages between the Hamas and between Israel. This is the only hope.
Well, do you think the current situation, the situation in Gaza is entering a decisive phase? And what are the significant challenges that are ahead?
Yes, I think, from my point of view, as I mentioned before, if we don't want, if there is no ceasefire, maybe before the Trump is coming for administration, and I hope that it will happen. I think they will continue attacking and they continue bombing Gaza because there are some militants from even Hamas. They are attacking Israeli soldiers there. So, as you know, there are response from the Israeli to bomb and to kill the people, the innocent people there.
Well, thank you very much for joining us from occupied Jerusalem. That was the political science professor Abdul Nasser Maki. Thank you very much for being here with us on Q News. And it's back to you, Selma.
Thank you so much, Mark, for conducting this interview. And now we move to the latest developments in Syria. The United Nations Security Council has extended a long-running peacekeeping mission between Syria and the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights for 6 months. In its resolution adopted on Friday, the Security Council urged both parties to adhere to the 1974 Disengagement of Forces Agreement and uphold the ceasefire. Director General of the International Organization for Migration, Amy Pope, has warned that Syria is currently incapable of managing the large influx of returning refugees. Speaking in Geneva shortly after returning from Syria, Pope said that the IOM does not encourage large-scale returns at the moment, as the country is not ready to absorb a large number of displaced people. Pope added it will overwhelm the country and it could risk greater, more disruptive impact on a very fragile peace process. News reports have said the Syrian transitional authorities have appointed Asad Hassan al-Shibani as foreign minister in the interim government. Al-Shibani assumes the position under the leadership of interim Prime Minister Mohammed al-Bashir. His appointment comes a day after a U.S. diplomatic delegation visited Damascus and met with the commander of military operations in Syria, Ahmed al-Shara. Qatar has reopened its embassy in Damascus 13 years after its closure. During a meeting with Syria's caretaker government, a Qatari delegation reaffirmed its full commitment to supporting the Syrian people and discussed ways to enhance the flow of humanitarian aid. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson, Majed al-Ansari, stated that the delegation reaffirmed Doha's commitment to helping the Syrian people achieve their aspirations for security, peace, development, and prosperity following the success of the revolution. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed al-Sudani emphasized that Iraq is evaluating the situation in Syria to make necessary decisions. During a meeting with Italy's defense minister, al-Sudani stressed the importance of assisting Syrians in managing their affairs without interference that undermines Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Algeria's UN representative Ammar Ben Jama stated that extending the UN peacekeeping mission in the occupied Golan underscores the necessity of maintaining only UN forces in the area. He added that the presence of Israeli forces in the demilitarized zone constitutes a blatant violation of the disengagement agreement. In Lebanon, international airlines have been resuming flights to Lebanon following the cessation of hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. The Lebanese government began issuing permits at the end of November and has continued to do so, allowing most international flights to resume during the holiday season, alongside the resumption of development work at the airport. The ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah went into effect on November 27, putting an end to the confrontations that erupted on October 8, 2023. Houthis have claimed that they successfully struck a military target in Tel Aviv with a hypersonic ballistic missile, marking another long-range attack against Israel. In a televised statement, Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sariyah said the group's missile forces targeted an Israeli military installation in the Tel Aviv area using a Palestine second hypersonic ballistic missile. The Israeli military said it failed to intercept a missile from Yemen that fell in the Tel Aviv-Jaffa area, and the ambulance service said 14 people have been injured. And now we move to the latest developments of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Ukrainian drones have attacked the Russian city of Kazan, and the airport there was temporarily closed. The defense ministry said the city had been attacked by 3 waves of drones between 7:40 a.m. and 9:20 a.m. Local authorities reported that there were no casualties. The mayor of Kazan said on Telegram that all planned mass events in the city would be cancelled over the weekend and that authorities would offer temporary accommodation to evacuees. All public events in Kazan, which is the capital of Russia's Tatarstan Republic, have been cancelled after thwarting a Ukrainian drone attack targeting civilian infrastructure. Hospitals in Kazan were placed on high alert following the Ukrainian drone attack. Earlier, Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency, Rosaviatsia, announced via telegram that flights arriving and departing from Kazan airport were suspended following a Ukrainian drone attack on the city. Ukrainian drones targeted the Russian city of Kazan, temporarily closing the airport, according to Russian media and aviation authorities on Saturday, December 21. Russian state news agencies reported that a residential complex in Kazan, located about 500 miles east of Moscow, was hit during the attack. The Russian Defense Ministry confirmed that the city faced 3 waves of drone strikes between 7:40 a.m. and 9:20 a.m. local time, or 4:40 and 6:20 GMT. At a United Nations Security Council meeting on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the Chinese envoy urged the U.S. to stop fostering confrontation. He refuted U.S. accusations, emphasizing China's non-involvement in the crisis and its recognized peace efforts. He criticized the U.S. for dismissing China's contributions while discrediting its role. Moving to the United States, Congress has passed spending legislation in a down-to-the-wire burst of activity that will avert a destabilizing government shutdown ahead of the busy holiday travel season. The Democratic-controlled Senate, in an 85-11 vote, passed the bill to continue government funding 38 minutes after it expired at midnight. The government did not invoke shutdown procedures in the interim. The bill will now be sent to White House, where President Joe Biden is expected to sign it into law. The package had earlier cleared the Republican-controlled House of Representatives with bipartisan support.
That there be 60 affirmative vote threshold.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has announced that efforts are underway to pass a short-term spending bill before the midnight deadline. Schumer acknowledged that numerous amendment requests have complicated the process, but expressed optimism about reaching an agreement in the final hours. Earlier in the day, the Republican-led House of Representatives approved legislation to avert a government shutdown, despite President-elect Donald Trump's calls to include measures for additional spending.
NEC on. I'm very glad we didn't. Look, this was a compromise. We got some major things.
The White House has stated there is still time to avoid a government shutdown, urging Republicans to honor a bipartisan agreement to keep the government running. In Congress, Republicans made a third attempt to prevent a shutdown just hours remaining. Their previous efforts were derailed by opposition from President-elect Donald Trump and members of their own party.
Trip in January. I'm always very careful.
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we've been covering. An international humanitarian organization reports citizens in Gaza are facing an extreme struggle to survive. Hamas says Gaza ceasefire deal with Israel is closer than ever. And the Syrian transitional authorities appoint Asad Hassan al-Shibani as foreign minister in the interim government. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.